In this lesson, we'll learn how to create an interactive report with control buttons that let you move from one page in the report to the next. To create an Adobe ROM. We'll start out this one by looking at something that's quite simple, and that's just some buttons that allow you to program actions or events that take place and things that should happen when that event is triggered. So let's take a look here real quickly at the example project that I've created. We've got a beginning sheet. It has a nice big picture of it. We're going to look at an environmental issue that faces a community close to where I live, an area I'm familiar with. And I always like to do things that are close to home wherever you can, so it makes it more personal. And on each of the individual pages, I've done some things with some Google Maps and some images that have been inserted. Now, that's nice enough, but how do we get from one element to the other? Well, to do that, we're going to use these very simple buttons that you can insert right directly on the canvas. And let's take a look at a preview to see how they function. All right, so I click on my Start button to start my presentation. And then, very simply, I've created two buttons. The one that's labeled Next takes me to the next sheet in my document. The one that's labeled Previous takes me back a step, and I can work right through my presentation. And of course, I'm using Google Maps, so those are uber cool. I can drag things around, I can zoom in, get it in a little bit tighter. Since I'm using a satellite image, I can actually see these areas where this environmental issue has become a problem, and actually see pictures from those areas as well, just by using some images that were inserted. So very kind of cool presentation, and we'll look at how this was all put together starting in the next portion of this tutorial. Alright, we're going to be working in the side panel there, the navigation panel, the sheet panel, whatever you want to call it, on the left-hand side, where we see a listing of sheets and objects. And in this area, we are going to be adding and organizing the different pages or the sheets that are found within our presentation. I've already started up a new document, and by default, I'm going to get one sheet in my document, and I've changed the name of the sheet to Intro. Now I can go about adding additional sheets, and it's pretty easy. Click the plus sign, click Add a Sheet, and I'm going to call this one Problem 1. Maybe we're going to be demonstrating some kind of problem or some sort of issue that your community is facing. Call this one Problem 2. And then we'll add one more sheet, and we'll call it Conclusion. Now, it's not necessarily mandatory that you name all these sheets as you go along. We're going to be using very simple buttons for this project, so you don't really have to name the sheets, but it's always a good habit to get into if you want to do more advanced sort of operations later on. You're going to want to have those sheets named for you. All right, let's go ahead and we'll add an art text tool, and we'll just call this with an M, my introduction. Okay, and we'll use the contact editor, get the size we want on the text, colors and so forth, and drag it, look for the yellow line until I see that, so I know I'm centered on my document. Okay, so there's my introduction, and I would have something here that would introduce the problem or the issue or the topic that I'm going to discuss. Now, again, we have to have a way to navigate down to the next sheet, and that's where I'm going to turn to the Insert panel. On the Insert panel, we have the Interactive Components object here, and you'll see that there are a number of them. The one we'll be working with initially is just the button. I'm going to select on the button, and the button requires that you double click, kind of drill down in order to be able to change the content of the button. Once I see that bounding box appear, I know I can go ahead and just double click on top of the text. I see the little ruler there. That means I'm using layout text, and I can change the font or change the style and change everything pretty much having to do with that text by just typing inside there. Okay, so now instead of saying button, boring, it now says start. Much more interesting. All right, now I clicked on the toolbar across the top. Remember, when you're navigating down into the interior of some of these objects, this little breadcrumb trail will appear in this toolbar across the top. And I want to be back on my intro, because what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and create an event that is going to be triggered when something happens. Okay, so actually the event is what's happening on the screen. So in this case, for a button, I have a button click event. That's what I want to use, and I want to add an action to the event. Okay, so the event is the click of the button. I want to add the action, and you can see the different kinds of things that you can do when you trigger this sort of event. So in my case here, I simply want to go to a sheet, and now I have the settings for the sheet. I can choose the sheets by their name. This is why naming them is so important. So if I wanted to go, say, I'll just go to problem 1, I can choose that, and that would do the same thing as going to the next sheet if I didn't have them named. So either way, I'm going to be able to do those sort of operations by just choosing that. It's quite a drill down though. So let's take a look one more time. I select on my button, I open up the context editor, I look at the event setting, I'm going to add an action to the button click event, and then from the available options I'm going to select on, in this case, go to sheet, and then once the action is added, then I'll tell Rome exactly what I want to have happen. Label to my second sheet, just so we can see if this is actually working correctly. Click on the preview, click on the start, and there I am, right there on my second sheet, right where I want to be. Alright, let's add now the buttons that will allow me to go in between the sheets. The start button is fine to go from the beginning to the second sheet, but I now need one that says previous and next, like we saw in the sample. Easy enough to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Insert, Interactive Components, and then Button. And then with my button selected, I'm actually going to go ahead and pre-position this button down in the corner where I want it to go. And I'm going to double click inside that guy, open it up so I can do my edits. Sometimes I find that this can be a little bit sticky, and if you hit your enter key, eventually you'll get down in there. There we go. Okay, so now I've got my button text selected. What I want to do here is I want to type in the word next and then a little arrow symbol, and then click back on sheet or my problem sheet, and what I want to do is I want to add the interactivity to this button. So again, the event is going to be the click of the mouse or a button click. We're going to add an action, and we're going to go to, not a layer, sorry about that, I want to go to a sheet. Well, remember, if I've got something, I make a mistake like that, I can delete that one and get rid of that guy out of there. Okay, so now I'm going to go to a sheet, and what do I want? I don't want the previous sheet, I want the next sheet. Again, I could choose by name if I chose to do so, but in this case what I want to do is I want to reuse this button. So by setting it up so it automatically goes to the next sheet, I can copy this button from sheet 2 and put it on sheet 3 or sheet 4, whatever the case may be. It'll always go to the next sheet in the stack. So let's see how that works. Right click will allow me to copy the object, just like I did there. I'm going to go over to the sidebar navigation, right click and choose paste. It's going to go in the same location, and again the events are set. Where is it supposed to go? It's supposed to go to the next sheet. So the events come right along with the object that I copied and pasted. So this allows me to just do a button a single time, get it into place, and now I'll basically do the same thing with my previous button. I'll create a new button, I'll change the label on the button, and then I'll set it to go to the previous sheet when the button is clicked, and then copy and paste as to what you want to insert for content for your report. You've got your navigation elements in place, and you can do like we did here with this example. We can use Google Maps as a way to pinpoint the location. Remember, when you're using Google Maps, you can double click on the map, and once you're down in the map editor, you have the opportunity to insert things like these map markers that we use to indicate where things were happening in this particular report. So all sorts of great things that you can do. The ability to put those buttons in place just sort of takes it up a next level and allows you to take a multiple paged interactive report and make it accessible to people who want to watch it.